Now, gentlemen, before we dig into the subject matter, I'd love to sort of give you all the floor and sort of 30 seconds introduction to sort of tell the audience who you are and where you come from. And we're going to start the session after that. Let's start with you, Daniel.
All right, wonderful. Hello, everyone. So, Daniel Hill, my name. I was a 2007 IFBB Pro World Champion. Started then a professional bodybuilding career, which was a time of discovery. Studied pharmacy before, so I was very analytical already back in that time to support my active days. But that led me down the journey of how does our physiology actually work, and discovering the integral connection that water is the carrier of all nutrients to the cells. That led me down the rabbit hole, ultimately on a journey of discovery that led to the inception of Acquivio, which is what we're doing now, basically reintegrating the potentials of functional water through smart equipment into our modern lifestyle. And I hope you all have the chance to try it out as we're serving it here proudly at Level Up in the VIP area.
Thank you, Daniel. Mark, over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks for hosting us. My name is Mark Gildee. I'm the Managing Director of Interact. We design and deliver physical activity and health programs. We specialize in schools and education. We have a wearable technology exclusively designed for schools. We are very proud of that. It is in well over 1,700 schools in the UK. And now, thanks to Abu Dhabi government, we are rolling it out now in a project with them. So this wearable technology, it measures MVPA, or moderate to vigorous physical activity, throughout the entire school day of children. And the data that we have already, both in the UK and in the UAE, is completely changing the way that we think about physical activity for children in schools. And ultimately, our wearable is about answering the question of how close are children in this country to achieving the World Health Organization's guidelines of 30 minutes of MVPA every single day for every single child in every single school. So some really staggering things that hopefully I can share with you.
Thank you, Mark. Mashari, last but not least.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here in this lovely, beautiful day. So my name is Mashari Al-Washmi. Have a PhD in digital health, and what we focus on is leveraging technology to better understand our human body. At Amplify Health, we're using heat or thermal images. So thermal images is a kind of imaging like X-ray and MRI. We've been using it for decades, but we're just using the cover book, which is when we get someone's temperature. But with thermal imaging, an AI will be able to better understand the human body. We've leveraged it in the medical field. We have our technology in many clinics around the world, and now we're tapping into sports medicine to help us understand and see injuries early before they happen and enhance also recovery.
Thank you, Ashari. Now, this panel really is here to examine how technology is reshaping athletes' wellness through innovation in recovery, mental health, holistic care, making longevity a cornerstone of performance, something that is really much in vogue now. Now, wearables, sleep recovery tools, mental health platforms are all improving rehab, resilience, and longevity. And the million-dollar question really is which metrics actually drive decisions. Now, Mark, from our exchange this week, your perspective that centers on large-scale schools and youth populations using wearable technology designed specifically to measure physical activity during the school day, something actually my own kids have been promoting for many years across the UK. And in order for actually today's conversation to cover the cross-section of elite tech, performance, and population level settings, I would like to start by asking all of you guys today your views on a number of areas I would like us to cover during today's session before we actually dig deeper into your own specialities and sort of get you to drive important messages that you are here to drive through the work you do. So let's start with the first topic, and let's start with you, Mike. So readiness versus load. Which signals actually matter across different athlete populations, from elite environments to mass participation and youth settings?
I think I touched on it already, this idea of what we're trying to achieve, what the question is. The question is are children getting the 30 minutes of MVPA every single day, and what does that look like? Now, in terms of the metric you asked about, MVPA is that metric. We could go and get a ton of extra metrics in schools if we wanted, but for me, and I used to be a teacher a long time ago, we have to remember that these are an environment, it's a learning environment, an education environment. And so making any technology that goes into a school to go and capture these metrics, it has to be simple for the schools. It has to make sense for the school. It has to make sense for the teacher. So if we're asking teachers every single day to calibrate things, sign into an app, all of these things, they've got a job to do at the end of the day to teach those children. It needs to be really simple. So in answer to your question, MVPA is the gold standard. That is what the World Health Organization are asking us to report on. However, the reason that we haven't gone any deeper than that at this point is simply because the user base that we have in children in schools, it needs to be bespoke and easy for them to use.
Mashari.
So I would like to double down here. Making it as easy and simple to use is critical. So we're collecting data from watches, from rings, from other sources of data. By the end of the day, it's not what we collect, it's what we do with it. So as long as it's actionable. I like to compare it to make it similar to cars. Cars collect a lot of data, and it makes sense when you see that check engine light. So how can we turn on that check engine light to see what's happening? In our field, we leverage thermal imaging and that asymmetry. You can easily see what's going on, so you can start acting on it.
And for you, Daniel?
Well, I mean, I would rather say I want to look at it at a holistic aspect. So we're living in an interesting time. I think now more than ever, a lot of technologies that have been only accessible to top athletes are now even in a wearable form. So that opens up a lot of perspectives, that opens up a sheer endless data stream. But I want to emphasize exactly, it needs to be actionable and we need to have solutions from it. So what I'm finding at the moment, I do not see that there is one singular metric that can be seen as the non plus ultra, but it's the synergies and the data correlations that can be found between them. And I think this is the critical point right now, that a lot of the data generating tools are still a little bit too siloed. So there needs to be more of a communication, the gap needs to be closed. And once we have correlative values between different metrics and markers, that's actually when we will get the technological results that we can apply in the real world scenario.
I mean, so all three of you talked about the data, and I often talk about the fact that data is that new king and new gold, as it's got application elsewhere. But you know, injury risks versus the actual noisy data. I mean, there's lots of data that's somewhat useless. So how do we turn that noisy, imperfect data into clear, actionable insights across many different contexts? Whether that's return to play in elite sports, or whether it's really evaluating interventions in wider participation environments or even schools, to your point, Mark. So let's start with you, Mashari.
Absolutely. So the beautiful thing right now that's happening, you hear a lot about it, is AI. AI is helping us understand this noisy data and making it more actionable. You see Whoop and Aura using that readiness level. This is great. For us, one of the noisiest data that you can ever see is thermal imaging. And that's where we come in, is to help analyze this data. Thermal imaging can be captured with a device as small as this. You just plug it into your phone, you link it, and you can take a picture of the muscle or the body, and we'll be able to automatically analyze it and tell you that there is something wrong here. Let's see what we can do. And so that's how we're leveraging AI to be able to better understand it.
And Mark, for you?
The terminology used was noisy data, right? I would argue that there's not many places where you're going to get more noisy, complex data than a school. Every day looks different, right? There's a national day, a sports day, an exam day. So the way that children are moving is constantly changing every single day. And so for us, it's about choosing the right times to zoom out and look at that data across the whole of Abu Dhabi, across an entire region, across a school, across a class, and understand how we can move away from that noise and have a look at the patterns at a macro level. And then choosing the right times based on that. Now, how can we identify who are the least active children across all schools in Abu Dhabi? Because there is one, by the way. There's a child, and this is a fact in whether it's whatever country we're talking about, there is a child that moves less than any other child every single day, whether it's in London, Abu Dhabi, you name it. And so identifying who that child is, then zooming in to go and create an intervention bespoke for that child and check if it works. So to me, it's all about being able to zoom out at the right time and zoom in to deal with that complex, noisy data.
Sure. And for you, Daniel?
I would in general say all data that isn't used is noisy data because it's not applicable. So in that sense, to identify, first of all, what's the point of utilizing it is the first question. I can only, in that sense, from my personal experience, maybe explain on one discovery that was particularly useful in my career, and that was when I utilized heart rate variability, when it was still a medical device that was a quite bulky box, which is now, of course, in almost any wearable watch. Sure. But correlating this with bioimpedance analysis and understanding really on the intracellular, extracellular water levels, what this means in the sense for inflammation, that was an almost epiphany moment in my athlete's career, which only led me further down to analyze myself without any potential of AI that was 15 years ago. All of these aspects, once we identify these correlations, noisy data actually turns into treasure. And that is the challenge, I think, of the industries, that we need to find solutions that look beyond the box and cross bridges and find the collaborations that can actually make synergies.
Great point. Now, Mishari, Mark talked about, in a way, behavior and the importance, I think, of their behavior change. I wanted to ask you what you feel genuinely drives long-term acceptance, adherence, be it in elite athletes or be it in everyday people. I mean, obviously schools fall under the everyday people of hobby sports sort of enthusiasts, the kids at school, and the elite athletes. What's your view on that?
Yeah, brilliant question. Rule 101 of behavior change is, if you want to make someone to do something, make it really easy for them to do so, as Mark said. So we need to be able to make it really easy for them to do, make it actionable. And once we make it easy and actionable as well, I think integrating it with others. So other types of data, but also once you get a scan or get a metric, knowing that someone else is looking at your data, that will increase the sustainability, because you say, if I don't do this exercise, or if I don't step on my weight, or did not collect that data, someone will be looking at it and call me and say, why aren't you doing this? So there is some source of an accountability. And to make it easy to use, usually it's important to talk to the users and understand them. So that's why we're launching actually a new product after using this one and seeing it. It's great for the physiotherapists and the clinicians, but the athletes themselves, we had to build a different product that would access them in an easier way through a smart mirror at the comfort of their home or the gyms. But the last thing I would say is we need to create things that would fit in their life instead of forcing it on their lives.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to move to kind of the point of debunking long-held practices. And I think, in your view, how's data helping us debunk long-held assumptions in sports and physical activities? And for example, what we think happens in a training session or PE lesson versus what truly happens in real-world environment?
Yeah, I'll share a very quick anecdote with you around debunking data, right? We done a study about 10 years ago in a school in London, and they this particular school felt like their playground needed a facelift. Okay, they wanted to paint some new lines on the playground. They were going to paint a football court, a basketball court, some hopscotch, these kind of things. And so they approached me because already I was doing some research in wearable technology, and they said, the company that we're going to use, we're going to spend about $3,000 on them. Do you mind if you show how much more active children are after we've given our playground a facelift, and they can use it for marketing purposes? So I said, no problem, let's do a university study on this. So we took a baseline of how active the children were on the playground before the lines were painted, and then, of course, we measured again once the lines were painted. And the data came back and showed that, on average, the children moved less after the lines were painted. And so everybody said, oh, there must be a problem with your wearable. And of course there wasn't. In fact, when we went back and had a look at the behavior on the playground, the children who were going to be active, these are the children that were going to play football, they were going to play football regardless of whether there were lines on the playground or not. They were putting jumpers down and they were playing, right? But the least active children, and these are the ones that are really important to me and to us, is those children, they usually are, within a school context, children that are overweight, children that are low on confidence, children that don't have friends. And these children walk around the playground in ones and twos, trying to get involved in a game. And actually what we had done for those children is we'd literally painted barriers on the ground that those children now, instead of walking across this area, this was an official football pitch now. And so they felt like they couldn't walk there. And it was a light bulb moment for us to realize that some of the interventions that we're putting into schools or in any context, not only are they not making some children more active, but they could be making those children less active. And so it was a great example of debunking just anecdotal evidence of putting an intervention into a school and assuming that it will get children more active.
Fantastic. Thank you. Daniel, on data challenging assumptions, when has data challenged your own assumptions in what you do, and what happens when things we expect to improve performance or activity actually have the opposite effect?
That is a very deep question in a way. In that sense, well, I would almost say that's not really data that has challenged it, but in my sports career, when performing in bodybuilding, the goal was to look good on stage. And I had a protocol that was nailed down to the last weeks of the contest preparation, day by day. I implemented, at that point it was ionized water before the invention of our water treatment technology at this point. But at that moment when I just changed the water, which most people would believe has water equals water, my entire dehydration protocol for the stage was, so to speak, derailed. So what I realized at that moment was I became too healthy for the optimal performance, which is the stage presentation in bodybuilding, which was extremely counterintuitive. And that turned my whole world upside down. So I know this is maybe not so much data driven, but it was a complete life change for me in realizing that assumptions need to be always challenged, and I think the same goes for data. And we need to have the real life experience, and we need to find the stage in order to experiment with it and test it not just on elite athletes, but also translate it into the real world. And as a last sentence, I found this very, very intriguing when I heard the two different perspectives on working from a medical field and also with elite athletes and then school children. I think in order to translate all the lessons that we're learning now from data with the help of AI that will exponentially speed up all our lessons, I think the key really is elite athletes are easy to deal with. They are controllable. They need to execute. School children, in a way, are forced to do what they're said, which they will resist. We all know that. But at the same time, making it playful. I love this. And I think this is actually the binding glue. We need to find a way to make the technology that we're implementing into the real world not as something that is just a hype. It might give an initial push to be the cool person that has the new gadget, but we need to find a way to make it integrated as a lifestyle that is usable in the day-to-day.
And I think we talked about this early on, about the fact that obviously elite athletes as the biggest assets of sporting properties these days are obliged contractually to actually be tracked because of the injury prevention, the injury recovery. And I guess I often talk about the beauty of sport is that actually we can use that as a massive platform to then do good in the community, do good in society. And I often talk about the fact I have no issues being tracked and giving consent to all sorts of things that might help even the next generation that suffers from different things as a mini guinea pig in a way, purely because if you got nothing to hide, then you also can give the consent. But something that came up yesterday in one of the panels I was involved with was the sort of notion of building versus buying, or build versus buy. So the question to all three of you is that where should organizations and when develop their own capabilities in-house? Or where do partnership or specialized technologies add the most value when scaling performance or participation programs? In the context of football yesterday, we talked about the in-house tech teams versus buying in the sports tech technology into all sorts of engagement in stadium consumption in order for the clubs to achieve the KPIs. What are your views in your respective fields? Mashari, let's start with you.
Absolutely. So I would think back, bringing back the medical field and what happens in clinics, I think would be a great example of how tech teams in hospitals manage this issue or this question for decades. So you would go back and think about it. You wouldn't go in and build your own MRI machines, X-ray machines, your own Whoop, your own Aura. It will cost millions and will take forever to build. So these different hardwares and deep specific knowledge, you wouldn't build it. But what you would build and focus on inside is, in a clinic, we would say the clinical pathways. If someone have a problem or something, how would that work? So one is the athlete pathways or training programs. These need to be owned by the club. The culture of the team needs to be owned by the club. But it's extremely important to have enough technical expertise to do two things. One, to assess the technologies that they come in. For example, in hospitals, we have something called health technology assessments. A lot of these things can be definitely be used in sports as well. In addition to the assessment itself, is how does it integrate into two things? One, how does it integrate with other data points that you're getting? The second one is how does it integrate in the workflow? Who would see the results of this data? Is it the player? Is it the coach? Is it the stakeholders? So once these are these need to be owned internally for sure and managed internally as opposed to be built in. That's how I think about it.
Mark, to you.
This is definitely not about schools or governments building wearable tech, but it is about schools and governments building a strategy to use it properly and to understand it. However, the partnerships angle is really interesting. It's absolutely essential to bring this to the global stage. So if you can imagine a global program to find the world's most active school powered by a brand that cares about movement, cares about physical activity, and cares about health, that is the next step for this in terms of those external partnerships.
Daniel, I actually like to ask you a different question. I love your product and your focus on proper hydration. I think next to air, probably the most important element. Your product that you build doesn't just make the water cleaner. It says it can infuse with hydrogen, which is another music to my ears. Now, your LinkedIn also says that you're into biohacking. And obviously a big buzzword on a global stage now, and definitely over here in this region. So Tell us a bit more on both in terms of your solution, but also the role that you could potentially play when it comes down to biohacking in this region.
So when we are talking about functional water, we're not specifically just looking at the characteristics that are easily measurable, like mineral content, for instance, or purity. So in our case, we're looking at, which was originally based on various medical studies by the co-inventor together with me, Dr. Ivan Doos, who published several peer-reviewed studies. And what we identified was electrolyzed water is a good base, but through the process or the limitation that it was not available on a commercial output rate, we searched for a way to overcome this. In the process of overcoming this challenge, we experimented with multiple technologies to find the same characteristics as proven in the medical studies before, which ultimately led to the inception of our technology. Now, the beauty of this became that we realized with the integration of biomarkers and having now the ability to even implement control mechanisms, we can, so to speak, create a water based on natural principles that we have lost in our urbanized environment, based to the limit of our human understanding at this point, but improve it and even personalize it towards the lifestyle of the end user. And for us, in that sense, we're interpreting this as the next mega trend to happen overall, which we see as the bio-revolution. So this will be functional foods, but also functional water. So in this sector, it is all, and leading back to the earlier question, it is all about integration over innovation. So this is so gigantic from a space that we are not the data generators, but we are the ones who can pinpoint and recreate the water towards the quality of the input level that we get. And obtaining this, in that sense, making it maybe illustrated for an end user, as human society, we were used to build our settlements next to clean water or good water quality springs. This is now derailed. This is not happening anymore. We denaturalize our water, and we have lost many of these properties. Understanding these properties, and we're really in the early stages of understanding water, this will give us the potential to, of course, optimize elite athletes who have different needs than the average person. But then when we're looking at somebody who has, for example, when we see with thermal imaging a lot of inflammation in his body, we can create this type of even more antioxidant water for that kind of person that will benefit them on that short-term basis until we bring them back to a lower concentration of antioxidants that just offset their regular oxidative stress load.
Thank you. Just to wrap up, gents, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to give your 2026 prediction and excitement around what you do in the space. Mashari.
So in 2026, we'll be launching a new product in the first quarter that will allow people to be able to see the problems in their human body and get actionable insights on what to do next with it. So stay tuned.
Mark.
For next year, for us, it's all about continuing our journey to find the world's most active school. So if there is anyone that's interested in helping us on that journey, if there's anyone who's interested in harboring that data that we have for good and changing national policies on children's movement, then we'd love to hear from you and work with you in 2026.
Thank you. And Daniel?
I already mentioned a little bit that we're working towards this hyper-personalization of the water, which is an ever-ongoing process, but we're not just a scientific company. So in that sense, we are largely in the moment in the upscaling phase, creating now smart infrastructure networks, largely in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and just launching also here in the UAE. So we're very excited about our GCC presence after already having executed our business operating in Taiwan, Singapore, and some other Southeast Asian nations. And this is for us now tackling these B2G projects even is a very exciting phase, which involves a lot of logistical challenges, building factories here in the region, and we can't wait to see where it's taking us.
Thank you so much. Join me and give these gentlemen a great round of applause.